In the Nevada desert, 3 hours north of Las Vegas, stands a silent structure of red brick, now vacant yet far from empty. This is the Goldfield Hotel. Some call it the finest relic of a boomtown. Others say it's the most haunted building west of the Mississippi. Tonight, we don't just tell you the rumors. We follow every twist. The boom, the fire, the legend of room 109, and a flying brick that changed everything. Stick around. This story will hold you until the final frame. Hello, and welcome back. To our returning viewers, thank you for your continued support. Your comments, likes, and subscriptions are what allow us to keep exploring these forgotten places. If you're new here, we're glad you found us. Prepare to step into the shadows of history. First things first, let's clear up a common misconception. When people think of grand, haunted hotels in Nevada, their minds often drift to the glittering lights of Las Vegas. But our story takes place far from that modern oasis, in a place where the silence is as vast as the desert sky. We're in Goldfield, Nevada, a town that is now little more than a whisper on the wind, a collection of skeletal remains baking under the relentless sun. But it wasn't always this way. To understand the Goldfield Hotel, you must first understand the madness that built it. Imagine this. It's 1902. The air is electric with rumor. Gold. Not just a little, but veins of it, thick and rich, running deep beneath the arid soil. The news spreads like wildfire, and a stampede begins. From every corner of the country, men and women descended upon this desolate patch of desert, their hearts pounding with a feverish dream of fortune. Within 2 years, a makeshift camp of tents and wooden shacks exploded into a bustling city. By its peak, between 1906 and 1907, Goldfield was the largest city in Nevada, home to over 20,000 souls. It was a raw, chaotic, and intoxicating place. The streets, thick with dust and ambition, were a river of humanity. Grizzled prospectors, slick gamblers, hopeful families, and hardened entrepreneurs. Even legendary lawman Wyatt Earp and his brother Virgil were drawn here, running a saloon in the town's early, wilder days. The sound of Goldfield was a constant cacophony, the clatter of ore wagons, the distant boom of dynamite, the boisterous laughter from over 40 saloons, and the ceaseless hum of a city that never slept, fueled by gold and whiskey. You have to picture the sheer velocity of it. In 1904, Goldfield produced about $2.3 million in gold. By 1907, that number skyrocketed to nearly $11 million. That's the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars today. This wasn't just a town, it was an economic engine. It had 3 newspapers, 5 banks, a stock exchange that rivaled San Francisco's. It was the center of the world for a brief, brilliant moment. But that kind of wealth, generated that quickly, creates immense pressure. It forges legends, but it also breaks people. For every millionaire, there were 1,000 who lost everything. That energy, that desperation and elation, it soaks into the ground. It becomes part of the place. And at the epicenter of this whirlwind of wealth stood one man, George Wingfield. Wingfield was the quintessential boomtown king. He arrived in Nevada with nothing, working as a cowboy and a card dealer. But he had an uncanny instinct for opportunity and a ruthless ambition. He partnered with a banker named George S. Nixon, and together they consolidated the most profitable mines, creating a financial empire that controlled the town. Wingfield wasn't just a miner, he was a builder of dynasties, and every king needs a castle. He envisioned a hotel that would not just serve the town's elite, but would stand as a monument to his own power and the permanence of Goldfield's wealth. A statement to the world that this was no mere mining camp. He commissioned the renowned architectural firm of Curtis and Holsworth from Reno, tasking them with designing the most luxurious hotel between Chicago and San Francisco. The cost was staggering for the era, over $450,000, a figure that would be tens of millions in today's currency. Construction began in 1907. Imagine the logistical nightmare, hauling tons of granite, brick, and steel into the heart of the desert. The finest mahogany for the paneling was shipped from Central America. Marble for the floors and columns was imported from Italy. Crystal for the chandeliers came from Europe. It was an audacious, almost arrogant display of wealth and will. The hotel rose, floor by floor, a four-story masterpiece of classical revival architecture, its brick and stone facade a stark, sophisticated contrast to the rugged desert landscape. When its doors finally swung open in 1908, the Goldfield Hotel was nothing short of a miracle. Imagine stepping in from the dusty, chaotic streets, the grit of the desert still on your boots. You'd pass through the grand entrance and find yourself in another world. The lobby was a cavern of cool, polished marble and dark, gleaming mahogany. Gilded columns soared towards a high ceiling from which hung massive, glittering chandeliers that cast a warm, golden light over everything. The air, thick with the scent of expensive cigars and perfume, would be filled with the low hum of conversation. Mine owners finalizing million-dollar deals, politicians currying favor, and glamorous women in fine attire observing the scene. The hotel boasted 154 guest rooms, an almost unbelievable number for the location. But it was the amenities that truly set it apart. Each room was a private sanctuary, offering luxuries that were the stuff of fantasy for most people at the time. Steam heat radiated through the building, a welcome comfort against the cold desert nights. Telephones in every room connected guests to the front desk and the world beyond. And most astonishingly, many rooms featured private bathrooms with running hot and cold water. In a town where many still lived in shacks and drew water from a common well, this was the height of civilization. And then there was the elevator. It was one of the very first Otis elevators installed west of the Mississippi River, a lightning-fast technological marvel that whisked guests silently between floors. It wasn't just a convenience, it was a symbol. It said that Goldfield and George Wingfield had arrived on the world stage. The design is a fascinating study in context. Classical revival architecture is all about order, permanence, and grandeur. It evokes the empires of Greece and Rome. To place a structure like this in a raw, untamed boomtown, it was a deliberate act of psychological warfare in a way. It was meant to intimidate and impress. The message was clear. We are not a temporary camp. We are building an empire that will last. The craftsmanship was impeccable. The brickwork, the stone lintels, the interior woodworkers, it was all done to the highest standard. It was built to endure, and as history would prove, it did. For a time, the hotel was the beating heart of Goldfield. It hosted presidents, senators, and captains of industry, but the very force that created Goldfield was destined to destroy it. Gold is a finite resource. By the late 1910s, the richest veins were playing out. The frantic energy began to wane, miners moved on, businesses shuttered, and the population began its steady decline. The Grand Hotel, once overflowing with life, grew quieter. The echoes in its opulent lobby grew longer. The final devastating blow came not from the mines, but from fire. In the pre-dawn hours of July 6, 1923, a fire broke out on Main Street. Legend blames a faulty moonshine still, a fittingly illicit end for a town born of vice and speculation. A fierce desert wind fanned the flames, and the fire tore through the wooden heart of the city with terrifying speed. It was an inferno. Eyewitnesses described a wall of fire consuming block after block. The town's fire brigade was helpless against the onslaught. When the sun rose, the devastation was absolute. Roughly 25 blocks of Goldfield's commercial district were gone, reduced to a smoldering wasteland of ash and charred foundations. Buildings that had once housed banks, saloons, and theaters were now just skeletal shells. The town's heart had been melted into the ground. Amidst the devastation, one structure stood largely unscathed, the Goldfield Hotel. Its robust construction of brick, stone, and concrete had acted as a firebreak, saving it from the flames that consumed its neighbors. It stood firm, a defiant monument in a field of ruin. But its survival was a hollow victory. The city it was built to serve was gone. The fire had extinguished any lingering hope of a revival. Goldfield never rose again. The hotel, once a symbol of boundless optimism and extravagant wealth, now stood as a lonely, silent tombstone guarding the ghosts of a golden age. Its doors would close for good just a few years later, leaving its 154 luxurious rooms to gather dust and to wait. And in that long, silent waiting, something else began to stir. The stories began. The whispers of those who never checked out. Before we descend into the shadows of one of America's most haunted locations, I want to extend a personal thank you. Your continued support, your likes, and your subscriptions are what allow us to keep exploring these forgotten histories and lingering mysteries. We're thrilled to have you back with us as we unlock the doors of the Goldfield Hotel. Of all the rooms in this decaying palace, one holds a story so dark, it has become the heart of the hotel's legend. This is room 109, and this is the story of a woman named Elizabeth. The tale, whispered down through the decades, is a brutal one. It paints a picture of Elizabeth as the secret mistress of the hotel's powerful and ruthless owner, George Wingfield. In the early 20th century, Wingfield was more than a businessman. He was a king in a town built on gold and greed, a man known for getting what he wanted and for discarding what he no longer had use for. The legend claims Elizabeth became pregnant with Wingfield's child, a scandal that would have tarnished his reputation. To solve his problem, he allegedly imprisoned her here in room 109. The most chilling detail of the story is that she was chained to the radiator, left alone in the dark, to await the birth of a child her powerful lover would never acknowledge. Some versions of the tale say she died in the agony of childbirth, her cries for help echoing unanswered in the opulent hallways. The most horrific part of the legend, however, concerns the baby. It's said that after the birth, the infant, a living symbol of Wingfield's transgression, was callously thrown away, discarded into a dark, unfinished mine shaft, rumored to run deep beneath the hotel's foundation. It's a story of love, betrayal, and unimaginable cruelty, a story that seems to have permanently stained the very walls of this room. But as compelling as this narrative is, it begins to fray under the scrutiny of historians. The story of Elizabeth is a powerful one, perhaps too powerful to be entirely factual. When you dig into the historical records, or the lack thereof, inconsistencies emerge that cast serious doubt on the legend. There are no birth or death certificates for an Elizabeth or her child that match the timeline, no missing persons reports, no newspaper articles about a tragedy at the hotel. For a town that meticulously documented mining claims and business deals, the complete absence of any official record of Elizabeth's existence is telling. Furthermore, the timeline of George Wingfield's ownership presents a problem. While he was instrumental in the hotel's construction and early success, he sold his interest in the building long before some versions of the legend are dated. Would he have had the authority to imprison a woman there in its later years? It seems unlikely. And what of the mine shaft? Geologists and local historians have pointed out that while Goldfield is riddled with mines, the complex network of collapsed tunnels doesn't run directly beneath the hotel's foundation as the story suggests. The tale of the baby being thrown down a shaft might be a tragic conflation, a blending of the hotel's dark reputation with the very real dangers and deaths that occurred in the mines all around the town. The story is a ghost in itself, an echo of the harsh realities of boomtown life, even if the specific details don't hold up. But for paranormal investigators, the lack of historical proof doesn't mean the haunting isn't real. It simply means the source may be something else entirely. And to find the most compelling physical evidence ever captured at the Goldfield, we must leave the tragic legend of the upper floors and descend into the cold, oppressive darkness of the basement. This space feels different. It's not a place of tragic romance, but of something more raw and primal. For years, visitors have reported feelings of aggression, of being watched, and of a heavy, malevolent presence. It was down here in 2004 that a paranormal crew from a television show called Paranormal Challenge would capture something that would change the world of ghost hunting forever. The team was filming deep within the hotel's sprawling basement, a labyrinth of stone and dirt. The camera was set on a tripod, recording an empty, debris-littered corner. On the footage, a single solid brick resting among the rubble suddenly lifts into the air. It doesn't slide or fall. It levitates, hovering for a heart-stopping second as if held by an unseen hand. Then, with a sudden, violent burst of energy, it flies across the room, crashing against the far wall. The footage was raw, shocking, and seemingly inexplicable. In the fledgling days of online video sharing, it became one of the first truly viral paranormal clips viewed by millions around the globe. Overnight, the flying brick of Goldfield cemented the hotel's reputation, transforming it from a local legend into a global paranormal hotspot. Immediately, the debate began, a debate that continues to this day. Skeptics cried foul, dissecting the footage frame by frame. The most common theory was a prank, likely involving a thin wire or fishing line. Proponents of this theory point to a faint vertical line that can be seen in some versions of the video, suggesting the brick was pulled from off-camera. However, investigators on site have consistently argued that the setup for such a prank would have been incredibly difficult in the tight, dark space. Furthermore, the brick doesn't just get pulled, it appears to lift and hover before accelerating, a motion that is difficult to replicate with a simple string. Others have searched for a natural, physical explanation. Could a localized tremor have dislodged the brick? Unlikely, as nothing else in the frame moves. Could a powerful gust of wind from an unknown opening have been the cause? Again, the dust and debris around the brick remain perfectly still until the object itself moves. Every logical explanation seems to fall short, leaving a vacuum that the supernatural is all too willing to fill. For believers, this was not a prank or a freak of physics. This was a poltergeist, a deliberate, intelligent, and hostile act. It was a spirit, angry and powerful enough to manifest physically, to manipulate the material world and throw a solid object with violent intent. But what is the source of this anger? Is it connected to Elizabeth, her rage and sorrow seeping down into the very foundations of the building? Or is it something older, tied to the land itself, or perhaps the spirit of a miner who met a violent end? The history of Goldfield is soaked in blood, greed, and desperation. Men died in the mines, they were shot in the streets, and they gambled away fortunes in the very saloons that once stood near this hotel. The basement of the Goldfield could be a focal point for all that raw, untamed energy of the past. Whether prank, physics, or the supernatural, that single piece of footage of a flying brick still divides viewers and investigators, a perfect symbol of the Goldfield Hotel itself, a place where the line between what is real and what is legend is impossibly and perhaps permanently blurred. Some say they felt shadow figures drift in hallways. Others claim sudden cold spots. A figure dubbed the Stabber has reportedly appeared near an old dining area, more startling than harmful. Others report seeing a woman on an upper floor, a man who died by suicide from the roof, or even a hanging figure in an interior room. And always, the smell of tobacco when no one's smoking. Today, the Goldfield Hotel still stands at the intersection of Columbia and Crook. Ownership continues to shift. Tours happen occasionally by arrangement. In fact, the property has been listed for sale, including surrounding parcels. Before we close the book on the Goldfield Hotel, I want to take a moment and say thank you to every single one of you who joins me on these journeys into the shadows, who hits that like button, and who shares your own thoughts and experiences in the comments. You are the reason this community exists. Seeing you return week after week, ready to explore another forgotten corner of history, is what keeps these stories alive. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. As we've walked through the rise and fall of Goldfield, from a tent city shimmering with promise to a ghost town haunted by its own ambition, the hotel has stood as its silent, stoic heart. You don't need ghosts to find this place haunted. It's haunted by the echoes of history itself. It's haunted by the manic energy of the gold rush, the desperation of thousands who flocked here dreaming of a fortune buried beneath the dust. It's haunted by the ghost of George Wingfield's ambition, a man who built an empire of brick and marble in the middle of nowhere, a testament to power and permanence in a world that was anything but. Every peeling strip of wallpaper, every pane of shattered glass, whispers of the opulence that once filled these rooms, and the deafening silence that followed when the gold and the people vanished. The building itself is a paradox, a grand Beaux-Arts masterpiece designed to project timeless elegance, now a monument to how quickly time can forget. And then there are the stories, the legends that cling to the walls like ivy. We spent a long time with Elizabeth in room 109. We sifted through the records, the rumors, the chilling accounts. And while the historical evidence for her life and her tragic end at Wingfield's hand remains elusive, perhaps that was never the point. Maybe Elizabeth never walked those halls as a living woman, but her spirit, the spirit of her story, most certainly does. Her legend shows us what a community fears and what it can't let go. It's the fear of unchecked power, of secrets buried by the wealthy, of a woman's voice silenced by violence. In a town built by brutal masculine ambition, her story is a necessary ghost, a lingering cry for a justice that never came. She is the conscience of the Goldfield Hotel. But she isn't the only one. As we've heard from local accounts and the chilling EVPs captured by investigators, the hotel is a chorus of whispers. There are the spectral children, whose laughter and running footsteps are heard on the grand staircase, a joyful sound made sorrowful by its context. There's the lingering scent of cigar smoke in the gentleman's lounge, attributed to Wingfield himself, forever surveying his decaying kingdom. We heard the account from the former caretaker, who spoke of heavy doors slamming shut in empty corridors, and the distinct feeling of being watched by unseen eyes from the darkened mezzanine. These aren't just isolated incidents, they are threads in a rich, terrifying tapestry of paranormal phenomena. As one investigator we spoke to put it, you can try to debunk each event one by one, but when you step back and look at the sheer volume and consistency of the reports over decades, you're left with something that defies easy explanation. Which brings us to that flying brick. The one caught on camera seemingly launching itself across the basement. Was it a genuine, terrifying display of poltergeist activity? Or, as some skeptics suggest, was it simply clever staging for a television audience hungry for proof? The hotel's second life as a paranormal celebrity, a required stop for every ghost hunting show, has undeniably shaped its legend. It has amplified the whispers into screams and, perhaps, added a few of its own. But does that invalidate the experience? Or does it simply add another layer to the haunting? Either way, it's proof that stories, like stones, can carry immense weight. A story can be thrown across a room. It can hit you. It can change the very nature of a place, building a new reality upon the foundations of the old. The story of the haunted Goldfield Hotel has become as solid and as real as the bricks and mortar from which it was built. So, what is it that truly haunts the Goldfield Hotel? Is it the restless spirit of a wronged woman, the residual energy of a boom and bust cycle, or is it us? Is it our own fascination with decay, our need to project our fears and hopes onto these empty spaces? Perhaps the answer is all of the above. The hotel has become a mirror, reflecting the history of a nation built on ambition and the ghosts that ambition leaves behind. It stands on that lonely stretch of highway not just as a ruin but as a repository for our collective memory and our collective dread. And now I turn that question to you. Were you ever inside those walls? Did you brave the tour or perhaps sneak in when no one was looking? Did you feel the profound cold in the summer heat? Did you hear a voice that wasn't there? Share your story, your feelings, your theories in the comments below. Every comment adds another thread to this incredible story. Because we're not done exploring the haunted heart of Nevada, our journey is far from over. Just a ways down US 95 in the old silver mining town of Tonopah is another hotel with a story that refuses to die, the Mizpah Hotel. There, a woman they call the Lady in Red is said to still walk the 5th floor. Legend says she was a high-class courtesan waiting for her lover in her favorite room, only to be betrayed and murdered. Guests still report the scent of her perfume in the hallway, their pearls mysteriously moved from the nightstand, and a gentle, spectral presence at the foot of their bed. She's waiting. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Together we'll go find her. We'll walk those halls, listen for her story, and see if the Lady in Red is ready to talk.